Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to this place of possibility. This is Love's Hearth, the home of hope, a refuge for minds in search of truth unfolding, ever beautiful, ever strange. Here, compassion is our shelter, freedom our protection from the storms of bigotry and hate. In this place, may we find comfort and courage. Here, may our sight become vision to see the unseen, to glimpse the good that is yet to be. Will you please join me as we look in your program for the lighting of the chalice. Thank you, Bill. May the light we now kindle inspire us to help, to bless, not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Will you please stand as you are willing and able to sing number 108.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the rill through far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth, that through the darkness round me glows. Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to the rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? Our thoughts to them are winging when friends by shed are undefiled. How can I keep from singing?
For the responsive reading today, would you please turn to reading number 531, the Oversoul. I will read the part in regular print, and you read the part in italics. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells within us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds. As there is no screen or ceiling beneath our heads in the infinite heavens, so there is no bar or wall in the soul where we, the effect, cease and God, the cause, begins. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events that I will call mine. And whose beatitude is accessible to us. Every moment when the individual feels invaded by it is memorable. The soul's health consists in the fullness of its reception. Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. It is love. This next part of our service is where we acknowledge the joys and sorrows that each of us have experienced over the last time that we met. And it is a very important part of our service to understand and appreciate where everyone is. The good news is it's almost spring, they say, but it sure feels like winter. If anyone would like to come forward and mention either a joy or a sorrow, you are welcome to. In the meantime, let's just take a moment to try to gather our thoughts and see what we might say if we wish to speak. Would anyone wish to speak? Betsy? Just give a, and I will light it. Okay.
Peter and I had a delightful afternoon. Peter and I had a delightful afternoon yesterday, even after getting lost. We went out to the lake to visit Joy Rowlandson and her family. They're quite a ways out. Not quite as far as we went, but they are quite a ways out. They have a lovely house right on the lake, and we had a great time. Joy seems to be very healthy, and everything's working out pretty well for her. I thought everybody'd like to know.
Anyone else?
So I'm reading the newspaper while I'm waiting for church, and the value add has flower seeds, gas grills, and lawn furniture, and weed and feed, and lawnmowers. So winter is over officially as of today.
Any other joys or sorrows? Thank you. I will light one last candle for all of the concerns or joys that we wish to keep to ourselves. We wish that everyone will appreciate the wonderful people that we've had in our lives and our pets as well. And now we will have our offertory.
me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
For the meditation today, this is from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. May I be a protector for those without protection, a leader for those who journey, a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor, the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all the sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of earth. Blessed be. It is my great pleasure to introduce a wonderful speaker today. He's going to speak to us about his journey to China. He's going to share some of his poetry and personal reflections about his trip to Sichuan, where he took part in an international gathering of poets convened prior to the pandemic. Consider that Bob has authored 3 books of poetry and received numerous honors for his work at home and abroad. He has been translated and published in China, Nepal, and Poland, and recognized for his ability to express universal truths with simplicity and beauty. His poetry evokes the wonders of the natural world and everyday life with an engaging philosophical resonance. I think this trip that Bob took struck me personally as such a wonderful honor for him. I think he was just one of maybe 5 or so other poets in the whole United States invited to take this trip. So I can't wait to hear him tell about it. Welcome very much, Bob Gianetti. And you have your own.
Everyone here okay? Good? Well. Do we need it louder? Yeah? Okay.
Eric will take care of it. Here's how you need to do it. Just give her a moment. You can't adjust it there, so just let Eric do it.
Okay. All right, we're set. Good. Well, I do have a greeting for you. It is inevitable that the winds whip up poetry, that the rising sun raise demands for drama, that the day pulse with sudden meaning, that silent surges of energy from unknown sources stir consciousness and expression. My feet planted on the ground are part of the same body whose hand in a burst of motion can reach upward and outward into the limitless expanse beyond my fingertips, into a space felt but unseen, connecting with other motions and forces in the fullness of time and space. These lines, now freed from my consciousness, greet you at some unexpected time and place. It is a greeting not to be seen only as cast in my words, but felt in the fluid passage of this and every moment as a force flowing in a dimension all its own, connecting me to you, one to all, through vast undulating waves, loose binding bands weaving through a universe both as real and as insubstantial as the solid earth I press beneath my feet and the inviting space my fingers feel as my hand is extended to you. I will begin with a poem that I wrote relative to the trip to China. It is called Close and Distant. On a flight to China before the pandemic, 20 hours nonstop in coach from Toronto to Beijing, I recall the close air in that cabin, going from east to west and then west to east, traversing the North Pole, all of us breathing that same air, cramped in a tight space, gliding down over Mongolia in anticipation of disembarking in Beijing. Unconcerned that our closeness on the journey could spell illness and death. In whatever language we spoke, then and now, a human race, soon to have our kinship confirmed anew, when the plague closed upon us all, unable to fly and breathe in peace, in close quarters, without fear. The trip to China was like no other experience that I had ever had. It was a festival including 50 poets, 25 Chinese poets, and 25 poets from around the world. The experience, and it was that of which might be accorded to an Olympic athlete upon returning home. Festivals, readings, a UN-style discussion in a big room with simultaneous translation. Just a real privilege to have been part of that. We were asked before we left to to send in an essay and 3 poems which would be published in an anthology volume. When we got there, the volume was published, and it was a great way for all of us to introduce ourselves to one another. And, it was just run very, very well. Outside of the English school in Sichuan, in a place called Zigong, there were placards, huge poster board sized placards lining the entrance to the school with our pictures, our bios in our language, and translated into Chinese, all that way. When we got into the theater, there were images flashed on the screen of each participant with a bio. Never have I experienced something like this, and I guess they do know how to honor poets well, as they do in Poland, which I had a chance to experience a couple of times also. In the evening, in the countryside on a lagoon. There were water ballets, fireworks, and again, the same images flashed on the screen. It's kind of hard to think of anything like that happening here. We spent a lot of time in a little place in the countryside called the Village, which was a cultural center. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. The thing that was so remarkable about going there was I had read prior to going about the wilderness poets of the Tang Dynasty, roughly 600 to 900 AD. And it was like the experience of the John Denver song, going home to a place I'd never been before. The wilderness poetry of ancient China is one of the longest traditions of wilderness poetry. In fact, it is the longest tradition of wilderness poetry in the world. The respect for nature, the connection to nature, the experience of the Tao, and a lot of these poets were Taoists, and I think it confirmed in me that I'm one. The nature of the Tao, I can only just give you, it is impossible to define, but it involves a whole cosmology, the Taoist way, the way in which all things come and pass away through being and non-being, emptiness and non-emptiness. The concept of emptiness is very important because things emerge, and there is a force that we're all part of, which once you try to connect with it, it's everywhere. There is no distinction. There's no dualism in Taoism. That is, the purpose of Taoist thought and meditation is that all things are one in every way imaginable. And it's not like the romantic poets of England and Germany, where nature is kind of, landscape and tourism. The intent of these early Chinese poets in the Tang Dynasty was to become part of that nature in every way. So, let me give you a few of those poems from a few of those poets. There's a tradition in China that, the civil service tradition grew up in a Confucian mode. And the civil service tradition was you took this exam, you were set for life, and you entered this complicated bureaucracy, which was highly corrupt and, rife with influence peddling and all sorts of things like that. But, very, very much like in the, in the Western tradition in Christianity, it became a super curia, a super Roman curia. And so the civil servants decided that what they had to do was to get out of this, that at some point they had to leave, they had to retreat for their own sense of authenticity. And what did they do? They went to cabins in the woods, to distant places on mountainsides, and attempted to become one with nature in that context. I started writing in earnest about age 60. It's long ago, 21 years ago. But I started writing in earnest after spending a lot of time at my cabin in North Georgia. And I related to something there because I was in really, just immersed in business then. And anybody who is that immersed in business feels the challenge to authenticity. If not everybody does, I'm sure, because we see what happens with worldly affairs, but I felt that, and I think a lot of people do, that there are so many challenges to integrity in the day-to-day life of being in business that one yearns for the simplicity of something like the Taoist wilderness poets did in 600 to 800. Here's something by Meng Huangjian. It's called Returning Home to Deergate Mountain at Night. As day fades into dusk, the bell at a mountain temple sounds. Fishbridge Island is loud with people clamoring at the ferry, and others follow sandy shores toward their 3 villages. But returning home to Deergate, I paddle my own little boat. Deergate's incandescent moonlight opening misty forests, until suddenly I've entered old Master Pong's isolate realm. Cliffs the gate, pines the path, it's forever still and silent. Just this one recluse, this mystery coming and going of itself. Or Li Po, one of the most famous of the Tang Dynasty poets. This, again, it's this rejection of the trappings of civilization and trying to get at the essence of being. Tucked into the earth, Golden Ridge City, the river curving past, flowing away, there were once 1,000,000 homes here, and crimson towers along narrow lanes. A vanished country, all spring grasses now, the palace hurled in ancient hills. The moon remains, facing the timeless island across home, its waters empty. The concept of emptiness and things emerging from emptiness and going back to emptiness, and it's the sense of the whole of the universe is something that came out of emptiness, goes back into emptiness, and as we speak, everything that we do emerges from emptiness and goes back to emptiness. Home Again, Among Fields and Gardens by Tao Chen. Here's the clearest indication of how the bureaucrats, had to escape their calling. Nothing like all the others. Even as a child, rooted in such love for hills and mountains, I stumbled into their net of dust. That one departure, a blunder lasting 13 years. Took the exam, passed it, 13 years, I've had it. But a tethered bird longs for its old forest. That seems to echo the Maya Angelou, I know why the cage bird sings, doesn't it? But a tethered bird longs for its old forest, and a pond fish its deep waters. So now, my southern outlands cleared, I nurture simplicity among these fields and gardens. Home again. I've got nearly 2 acres here, and 4 or 5 rooms in this thatch hut. Elms and willows shading the eaves in back, and in front, peach and plum spread wide. Villages lost across mist and haze in distances. Kitchen smoke drifting in wide open country. Dogs bark deep among the back roads out here, and roosters crow from mulberry treetops. No confusion within these gates, no dust. My empty house harbors idleness in spare. And back again, after so long caged in that trap, I've returned to occurrence coming of itself. It's the openness of the Tao. Things come, and you try to flow with it. Well, those were the ancients. The moderns that I met at the conference. You noticed many references to the moon, I trust, when in those ancient poems that I read from the Tang. The modern poets who were there all seem to focus on the idea of the moon as something that symbolized their longing to get back to the countryside. China's policy was to take people from the country, put them into high-rises, become an industrial power, but the poets in those high-rises yearned to be back in the countryside. And indeed now, just as a contemporary aside, and now China's aim is trying to repopulate the countryside because the infrastructure is breaking down with the extent of the population. And I asked the conference convener, named Gianetti, I said, why, how do you get people back there? And is it in some way related to having us at this conference? He said, yes, we want to hold cultural events like this to really bring people back into the countryside. I said, if this were America, we would build a sports stadium. And he said, no, that might work for some, but really everybody, one of the advantages of a universal education system, it has disadvantages, but one advantage is they all studied the same poets. They all had a regard for something back in the culture which would allow the creation of a poetry festival or a music festival or whatever to get people back to their roots. So, let me give you some modern poets, and we'll go. I'll just excerpt from here. The moon in my hometown. The moon looks at you with the face of your hometown. You look at your hometown with the face of the moon. You sit opposite the moon by the river of the moon, and in the moonlight, you turn to homesickness. Unconsciously, you grow up in the moonlight and get old. Unconsciously, you will stay away from the moonlight and become a stranger. Without knowing it, you will understand the meaning of moonlight as water. Moonlight is like water. moonlight is like water. It is as mellow and intoxicating as rice wine in my hometown. You in the distance, you carry the moon of your hometown, but you are unaware that the moon in the hometown is always with you wherever you go. Only feel the autumn wind tonight. It is the hometown of the moon and holds you tightly in its warm arms. The moon. There was a young lady who, young, maybe 35, who read a very affecting poem about mooncake, which is, a nice delicacy in China. I had many, and she remembered her time in the countryside eating mooncakes. With my 3 brothers and sisters, parents and grandmother, we gathered in the evening in the Mid-Autumn Festival. Each of us enjoy 1/7 of the whole mooncake. I counted the pastry piece by piece. Now, here in Zhejiang, where we were, Zhejiang, Sichuan, I will alone finish the whole mooncake, but I look up and ask the moon to let 7 of us gather. Let my father see 3 of brothers and sisters happily share 1/7 of the mooncake, even if tonight. A poetic reflection from me. So now, it has all come to where it has always been, fluid and fixed. Nothing changed. Days and nights rotating, measuring time. The present starlight blinking through what is long past, night after night. The wakefulness of days, the trees tossing and turning above trunks rooted and gripping, day and night continuing, all coming of itself, filling the empty mind, going into and out of existence. What does this mean for human beings? Another poem of mine, Cast-Offs. There comes a time to cast off society's tights, its cap and bells, and don a baggy cape, loose in the fullness of years. Nothing else will suit. A threadbare fabric spun off the ordained loom is what freedom and wisdom allots. Fitting, too, that in due time it all unravels and becomes undone, slipping from its wearer, its threads separating in the winds and the vastness. How am I doing on time? No? Okay. In the UN style discussion we had, I read some of my essay, and again, it was so nice to have this stuff. You could just converse very readily, and so a bit of that essay, which, the thing is that as poets, you hear about the repression in China. Well, maybe it's because poetry is distant from the minds of the autocrats, but there was no sense of repression, except, of course, if you criticize the government in any way. but the sense of human connection, the sense of being able to say what's on your mind, was very clear. So I gave these thoughts here. Can indulgence in the personal enjoyment of life and the self-sacrificing striving for human betterment coexist? Surely, human exaltation needs to be sought and nurtured, even in the midst of terror, confusion, and destruction, or nothing makes any sense at all. But we are ultimately subject as individuals to the larger forces of nation states and capital markets, which define the societies in which we live, whether they be communist, whether they be so-called free societies. The market is the ruler. Withdrawal from society may clear the way for a vision of beauty, but seldom changes anything and cannot sustain itself. How is it possible to live an honest life while the whole world wants to live a lie? What is authenticity then? Innocence? Surely authenticity can make different demands of the individual in different circumstances. In one context, you might ignore the march of folly and seek beauty and retreat from the world. In another situation, one of overwhelming difficulty, surviving day by day, authenticity might require active resistance rather than resignation. Can beauty be found and enjoyed for its own sake in the latter case? And is there a mantle of cowardice and disregard for one's fellow man in the former? The truth is that of the pendulum, an irresoluteness that afflicts all choices in life. A demonic lullaby often conceals the dilemma, the smothering reality of 21st century consumer culture can obscure the path to authenticity, and comfort can readily become a surrogate for beauty. You all remember the Paul Simon song? Many's the time I've been mistaken, and many times confused, often felt forsaken, and certainly misused. Oh, but it's all right, I'm all right, just weary to my bones. Still, you don't expect to be bright and bon vivant, so far away from home, so far away from home. I don't know a soul who's not been battered. I don't have a friend who feels at ease. I don't know a dream that's not been shattered or driven to its knees. Oh, but it's all right, Lived so well, so long. Still, when you think of the road we're traveling on, I wonder what went wrong. I wonder what went wrong. We come on a ship they call the Mayflower. We come on a ship that sailed the moon. We come in the time's most uncertain hour and sing an American tune. Oh, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right. Can't be forever blessed. Still, tomorrow's gonna be another working day, and I'm trying to get some rest. That's all, I'm trying to get some rest. I don't know any magical solutions, but I think they are all perhaps tied up in our connections with the world as it is. The lead poem in my last book was called The Frontier, and the book is called The Frontier, and I'll end with this. We all live along the Niagara River, a strait between two inland seas, Erie and Ontario joining. swift and relentless before and after a thundering fall, its current racing through distant past and present imagination, rushing through brief lives lost in time amid slow and severe sculpting of earth by water. A gorge at once inscrutable in a mask of permanence, in the fleeting frontier between nations, a river coursing timelessly through life and death, memory and oblivion, affection and hate, happiness and sorrow, strength and weakness, eternity and time, overwhelming the mass of men and women seeking to make something of their lives, some in short time, others longer, all never stepping into that same stream twice of what is now, all in all, now and forever, the secret of origins and destinations unknown. In time and time after time, we try to get it right, like the endless grasses and wildflowers, trees and bushes and vines rising from the earth in exuberant beauty and splendor, to defy the gravity, the smothering entropy of growth and decay, disappearance and oblivion. Now and for all the forever we know, the Niagara sidles along, sculpts and sustains the wonder of this and every frontier, whose banks of separation and connection bring us through and beyond the straits of perception and expression. I call upon you, Niagara, to let us bring to the surface what is now submerged, to inspire memory and hope, and give me strength to lift my tale from the waters that overwhelm ear and eye with speechless majesty, hushing words that now have been spoken. Thank you. I don't mind taking questions, even though I've probably gone over time, if you like.
Does anyone have any questions?
Or if you have vegetables, prepare to throw them now.
Bob will join us downstairs for the repast, I think, prepared by Paul. Not only is he our president, but he's also a good cook. That's always helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will.
And the announcements?
Yeah, just adding to your announcement. It's called a boiled dinner. I'm from the Southern Tier originally, so my aunt used to make this. It's got ham in it, but it's got cabbage and potatoes and carrots, peas, corn. I think I got some green beans in there, a little bit of broccoli, and whatever else I could think of to put in there. So it's beaten almost like more like a dinner. The spoon I have in there is like a straining spoon. But if anyone does want to try it as a soup, I suppose you can. I've never eaten it that way as a soup. And I have provided salt and pepper downstairs if it needs a little extra seasoning. And there's donuts downstairs too from Franco's. It's called a boiled dinner. Yeah, very simple.
Would you please stand as we sing our closing hymn, For All That Is Our Life, page 128.
For all that is our life,
all we were going to do? Okay. I thought we were going to do two stanzas.
Oh, you want to do it? Okay.
Okay.
For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life.
And for the extinguishing of the chalice, we extinguish this flame. Or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts, and we are together again. And I know everyone will be thinking of Bill and Patty as they make their trip this coming week. And we wish you well. You are in our thoughts always. If anyone wishes to join us, we have, as I said, coffee hour downstairs, and Bob will join us as well. You could see some of the work that he's done, some of the poetry that he's done there, and books that are available for purchase. Thank you. Patty?
Moon river, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, your heart breaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end, waiting around the bend. Me huckleberry friends, Moon River and me.